Hello there. Can you hear me okay? Excellent. Thank you, everybody. And I hope you've had a good restful night's sleep. And welcome to another day at the Planetary conference. My name is Milja Kurki, and I am one of the Planetary Fellows here this particular fall semester. I'm also a professor of international politics at Aberystwyth University. I am co-organising this particular panel with Miranda Whall, who is an artist and a performer, and also a colleague of mine at Aberystwyth University. I will introduce us to what we do today, which will be thinking with a project called When Earth Speaks, which is a project Miranda has been leading on, and which has been particularly impactful for my own work as well. Sorry, did you? Okay, yeah. And what we'd like to do today is to invite you basically to think with this project When Earth Speaks. I'll say a little bit at the start about how it links to the project that I'm actually working on here. I'm working on here in Gießen. So my project for the panel was a book called Planetary Multispecies Politics, which I've been working on for 4 or 5 years now, but it's almost complete, and I've been completing it here with the fellows and working with the fellows, also developing new content for the book. And the book is about how we might learn ways of unlearning how we think about politics and how we think about the political order, and also find ways of doing politics outside of the usual kind of human-only environments, human-only spaces, human-only decision-making structures. So the book, on one hand, is an academic argument that tries to, if you like, melt away some of the rougher edges of the modern political order, the conceptions of politics as states, as international organizations, as those human-only spaces. And on the other hand, it's also an attempt to try to move with and flow with planetary multi-species politics. And the argument in part is to say that actually this, what we might call planetary multi-species politics, is actually not as difficult or tricky philosophically, theoretically or otherwise, unless we start from the rigid conceptions of politics, which many of us at least have been taught to start from. So in part, the book is an attempt to try to not to start with the modern political order, but rather to start from somewhere else and with others in other kinds of places. And in this attempt to do the politics differently, if you like, one of the things I've been exploring is also very different ways of writing. So I'm a very traditional academic. I come from political sciences. I write in normally written form and a very much kind of logical, philosophical tradition, theoretical form. But what I've been trying to do in the book is to try to also explore very different ways of kind of thinking and communicating. I've been writing a lot of essays, also dealing with imagery, poetry, and the book is also written. It's literally written not just by me, but multiple different authors, human and also I would say non-human. Non-humans at least have been thinking with us as we've been working through the content. Now this When Earth Speaks performance has been particularly informative for me in the sense that I have now for some years been hanging around with, moving with, learning from Miranda's way of triggering us to think about the world and the political, but also ourselves and our relationships around us in different kinds of ways. And in this book, then, what I've done is there's a section in the book on the When Earth Speaks project, and this particular conference panel is an attempt to try to, in a sense, give you a sense of that section on When Earth Speaks. So this is not going to be a traditional academic argument. Instead, it will be an engagement with Miranda's work. Insofar as you can see, this is a co-organized panel. I am here. Miranda is not here. Miranda was, of course, with us earlier. You saw her, and she's actually out here. if we can see her. So you won't see her, but we should be able to hear her. We can't hear her. We'll see if we will. We'll see if we will. Let me just tell you a little bit first about what Miranda is doing before I get into the panel session as a whole. So Miranda is outside. She is lying on the grass outside the castle in the castle grounds. She's lying on the grass partly because we were refused permission by the government of Hesse to dig a hole into the castle grounds. It's a historic monument, and that was not allowed by the state government. But she's lying on the grass, and she has a probe that is plugged into the ground, and she's listening to a data stream that is coming from the grounds here in the castle. Simultaneously, she's listening to a live stream of 12 soil sensors that are speaking to her from Wales, from Aberystwyth, where we live, and where her original performance on this took place. And she is reciting, and she's sitting with that data. And in part, I'm sure you'll find her work is about data, and it's about how we deal with streams of data materially. And so she's there outside. She's also there, I think, in part as a protest. You'd have to ask her to get her view, but I think she's in there also as a protest. And that's partly because quite often we have conferences like this, and we are very comfortable here, and we are thankful, of course, for that, grateful. But also there is a sense in which we are also kind of looking the outside, and rather than staying with it. And her performances are very much about taking the time to listen, taking the time to think about the translations and the interpretations and the retranslations of actually spending time with. So spending time with the earth is part of her way of caring, part of her way of performing, and part of her way and also of getting us to think about what it is that we're doing when we're sitting in conference panels thinking about planetary problems and perhaps trying to even solve them. So what follows then in this room, as Miranda is witnessing the earth on our behalf, perhaps, are a few essays, explorations, also a section of an interview with Miranda, where she explores the meaning of the project, and I explore the meaning of the project for my political thinking about international politics. There are 3 sections to what follows. The first section is called At the Art Centre, and it's about the difficulties of interpreting Earth signals, if you like, in our human temporal environments. And the second part is called Data and the Ditch, and it's based on an interview that we did actually in the hole in the ground that she has dug for her previous performances in Aberystwyth, and it's about extraction and data. The third part is called At the Castle, and it's about political voice and ownership of the earth, and it's linked somehow also to the process of coming to the castle. So that is what will follow. Then at the end, I would also ask us to go, if you wish to, outside and spend time with Miranda. I know some of you might be eager to go already. If you wish to, you can. You won't offend me. If you want to spend time with Miranda or the earth, that's perfectly fine. But without further ado, let me start the first section. So, let me just see how. We can see her live. The sound is not coming through for some reason, but.
Hey, could you please? Good time. Good change. Good time.
Okay. Okay. So, When Earth Speaks at the Art Centre. 9.287161. 1.28F76 41 9.3951569 9.347101. Miranda's voice is focused, calm but relentless in recording the numbers on the page. Data from the hillsides of Peiran. CO2 and moisture level data, I think it is. It comes relentlessly. This is being listened to, interpreted, I guess, by Miranda, who is drawing the numbers onto a nearby empty white canvas, and a lady on a harp. The harpist is also interpreting the numbers by picking the strings, sometimes in a chord-like way, together, other times as singular notes. Miranda is on some level just reciting, repetitively, like some sort of an objective, dispassionate scientist that she doesn't see herself as. I listen to Miranda, faithfully enslaved by the numbers, and to the translation, more open, more interpretive. Miranda and the harpist and all other parts of this collaboration, including the monitors in the hills and the internet towers, are all conduits of a kind of a multi-pronged set of translations. The monitors are interpreting and translating the earth into numbers. This is the voice of the earth, I guess. Less than a choir, more like a solo singer, singing not a harmony nor a song, but a voice it is, I guess, nevertheless. So we can't hear her numbers at the moment. We'll come back to her in a moment. This language created for this voice is, of course, artificial in many senses. This is the language of numbers, 9.287161. This is a kind of arbitrary language we came up for recording a voice of a hillside. Much is lost in the translation of the hillside. This simple set of numbers simplifies a lot, most probably. Yet the longer I sit here at the art center, listening to the numbers, hearing it also complexifies, it forces questions. The interpretation of the numbers into the picking of the strings in the harpist's hand is also an arbitrary language, but it's also an interpretation and a translation. An interpretation of a voice already translated and interpreted by the sensors and systems which force the earth into a binary code and mathematical strings of numbers. Like the sensors are translating CO2 levels in the ground, creating a language, Miranda's hands are interpreting the numbers by way of imagery, and the harpist's hands are interpreting them rhythmically. The voice of the earth, translated, interpreted, translated, interpreted. Broken telephone. Perhaps. So much lost in communication, maybe. Much is certainly lost in the communication, but it's also communication. We often think animals don't speak, Earth doesn't speak, not really. And here it is speaking, through translations and interpretations, but speaking, there is no doubt. Speaking with difficulty in a crowded cafe at the art center that doesn't have any time for it, really. Kids are running around. People are hurrying for coffee. Some curious eyes and ears are asking, what is being done here? What is this? Ooh, the earth is speaking. Wow, kind of cool. But hardly anyone stops to listen, though. No one stops for longer than a few minutes. I am here, and I'm forcing myself to listen in many ways. But it is very hard. It does feel hard to hear. My mind veers off, and I think about all the other things I could be doing, like shopping for cat food or finishing an article on planetary politics. Why is it so hard to listen, I wonder? Like we fail to listen to the earth in other ways here too. Despite all the amplification, the voice is crowded out. This public space is like a soft room that dampens the sound. Earth is speaking here, kind of cool, but we won't hear, we can't hear. And this is in many ways what I think the performance here reveals. How we just don't listen, how difficult it is to listen, and yet how interesting the translations can be should we be able to shift our focus and our attention spans even a little. And yet here, the materiality of the pen that I used to write this very essay written by hand when I was sitting there, it feels visceral here, the pen. It is off the earth. It is also helping the many translations going on here right now, the numbers, voice, harp, click of the camera, my pen too scratching on this paper, making these notes, paper also of the earth. It just so happens that earlier on in this very notebook, I had done some calculations of the total mass of an accretion disk in a compact binary star system and the time it takes for the disk to run out of matter given a particular mass accretion rate. This was part of my Open University studies on astrophysics. But how strange that science is too, this hard science, the science with the big S, the hard way, the data way. In science, the big S science, numbers translate a physical system which we can't see in an ocular way to capture it somehow. All we have are some photos on pixels and computer-generated light curves and spectral lines captured as numbers, which we then interpret and translate into explanations or stories of what is actually out there. Let's call it an accretion disk. Let's call it Earth. One is just here, another thousands of light years away, yet for both we just devised the languages we devised to listen and to interpret and to retranslate. For both systems, the way of doing this, I suppose, is called science. But science, the biggest science, is not the only way of translating. How do we reveal the voice of the Earth in multiple registers? How do we enable the accretion disk, maybe, to speak to without being made into an object? This is a problem for the Earth, it's a problem for science, and it's a problem for us. But where are the scientists that made this translation possible? The computer scientists, the engineers, the biological scientists of the hillside. Why are they not here to listen to this translation? Peter, my partner at home, helped to actually put the sensor network into place in Peiran, where this data is coming from. It took months of very hard work, trudging in the peatland, building the networks in the snow, building the towers, boxes. We talked about it many times at home, about how he was going to the hills to help Miranda to Miranda's thing. He talked about his conversations with the spiders that had moved, that had made their homes in the data sensor boxes, making use of the waste heat. He had spoken of his worry about the bugs in the ground and how their lives were changed, upended with the digging of the ditch, but also how they adjusted to the towers and the sensors and made them their homes. He was at the art center earlier. He said, very nice. But he didn't linger. He went back home. Peter has a lot of invested in this project, a lot of time, a lot of effort, but taking time to listen here, taking time to think about the Earth and the translations thereof, not so much. That's more tricky. He has, after all, done his bit. He captured the Earth in numbers. He helped Miranda prepare the tech. But what of the translations? What of the hermeneutics and the double hermeneutics of the Earth speaking? How do we deal with the difficulty of never fully understanding, but trying to stay with the trouble of that? The fact is, it's difficult to listen, to me too, to pay attention at these scales, at our time frames. I think that again, as I squirm on this seat, kind of uncomfortable, kind of bored, to be honest. And at times, I become one with the flow of numbers. At other times, I just feel awkward and fidgety here, like I'm wasting my time. I'm wasting my time here, listening to the Earth. Someone inside me says, we don't need to listen to the Earth here in the art centre at Aberystwyth. We just need to get on and save it. Screw the Earth. Let's just get on and save it. We have all the data. It just takes too much time, all this listening business. We have the data. Let's just get on. What an impulse, what a colonial impulse this is. We just think we know better without having to adjust our hearing, our skill sets, our timelines. So is climate crisis a problem of capturing and knowing, or is it one of listening and interpreting? 10.219964. 10.275692. 10.197521. Earth speaking to a void. No, perhaps not. Earth speaking, ignored and misunderstood, but also somehow amplified, but yet crowded out by our coffee chats. Translated and interpreted, definitely not captured. Simplified, but thus not necessarily made simple. That's the end of section 1. We'll see how Miranda is doing, maybe. So there is I don't know if you can hear it, probably not. The numbers are coming through to her, but we're hearing the background noise more, which is fine. It's the background noise, it's not background noise, it's also of the air.
Is that the maximum volume?
It is, yeah.
Shut that off for now.
They look.
Yep.
Say right there. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, part 2, data and the ditch. This is a snippet of a conversation me and Miranda had at the ditch in Pwllheuran in mid Wales. It's a discussion that covers aspects of the performance, but in particular discussion of data extraction. Milja. So for all these projects, when Earth speaks, but also the variations of it, when peat speaks, when seeds speak, data is crucial, right? They are built around a data set taken from somewhere. Why is the data crucial, in a sense, for you, for the concept, for the idea, for this performance? Miranda. Because that's the Earth speaking, that's the Earth's condition. The data is one way of getting close to getting at. Well, there are so many ways of getting at. There are so many ways of getting close, aren't there? Like we can look at it, we can sample it, we can test it for things. This was my access here. This project gave me access to a certain voice, giving certain information, and I really liked the non-representational aspect of that. Can you explain more about that? Yeah, that's a good question. On the one hand, I'm a romantic. But on the other hand, I really like the obscurity of it, the kind of, what's the right word? I guess at heart, I think it's about the disconnect. And actually, it's quite nihilistic and dystopian. It's about the gap. So I'm revealing the gap. And I'm also being quite cynical about the data and critical of the data, because having worked here at the university with many academics and scientists, I'm becoming more and more aware of how much data is being generated around every conceivable question. Like, really valid questions on one hand. I don't mean to invalidate these questions, but I'm quite overwhelmed by how much data is being collected, and I'm really curious and a little bit skeptical around what it's all generating. And then particularly critical of the fact that human behavior and policy isn't keeping up or matching up with all this data. So we're kind of swimming around in massive amount of data. It's becoming a new landscape. How much more data do we need is my question before we change our behavior, policy. So yeah, I feel that we've created an absolutely bizarre and dark ecology of data, that if we dropped into this Earth from another planet, we would laugh and we would cry at the same time at the ridiculousness of it all. What the aliens say, they would look at these people here on the Earth studying the hell out of the planet and themselves and everything in it. And they have all this data, but they just can't make any sense of it. Is that the sense? In a nutshell, yes, that's exactly it. So lying here was meant to be ridiculous. It's kind of meant to look ridiculous. It's about the feedback and the comments, because it kind of went viral on Twitter and X, and everyone's sort of saying, "Ooh, what's she doing? What's the point? Do something else. Haven't you got anything else to do? And the answer is, no. Have you? What are you doing? What are you doing? What is better than screaming quietly about how much data we're generating and listening, and everyone's getting on with their own thing regardless? And also, I've spent loads of money and I've driven up here to the hillside in my four-wheel drive, and I'm also complicit in it all. It's like no one is outside of this. It's a feedback loop. We're all in a loop, aren't we? We're chasing our tail, we're eating our shit. So it's about the disconnect, isn't it? There's no way in. There's no way in other than our human way in for the humans. We have got no other way in than all the things, all the modalities that we as humans have developed. But I feel like I'm tackling it from just as many places as I can, and portals, different kind of portals I can provide. And then the drawings that I make of the data, I think are really beautiful accompaniment to it all, because that's me, that's a human, processing the data over many, many hours, very quietly, often in a solitary space, and that those fields of numbers on the paper, they become new. Again, they become a new landscape that becomes completely indecipherable in a way. They become like mist or clouds. So I call them ink clouds because they're a data storage. They're kind of like an analog data storage. So I was doing them over months and weeks or days. So you've got this record, this storage and this record, but both tell you nothing. So does the data tell you nothing? It's a kind of equivalent, in a sense, that ends up as indecipherable as the source material itself, the data. But there's something very poetic about a human being having spent time with it. The time I spend is the time I'm with. The time that I'm with is the time that I care. And ultimately, we need to care. So underneath all this data, above and underneath all of it, is that we need to step up and care. And unless we do that, then it's just noise, all this data. So this was my way of caring. My way of caring was to be, my way of being, of caring was to be in the ditch, lying on the grass, listening. My way of caring was to be in the drawing. My way of caring is to be with the data. And there is a protest in that as well. So to be is to protest. To be still with something is to protest. To lie down is to protest. To just process the data is to protest. The interesting thing with the data is that it's both at the same time taking things very seriously. In a way, this is me speaking now, in a way you're taking it more seriously than the scientists are taking it. Miranda, yes, so I'm trying to give it value. My being with it gives it value, but am I making it valueless? I'm questioning its value, aren't I? I mean, in turn, my drawings could be worth actual money, and then people spend time with them. The scientists need the data to use it, utilize it to give them information to do something with it. But I'm holding it. I'm holding the data. I'm intervening and using it as a material to hold, to represent, to give status to. That's what art does, I guess. That's literally what art does. Duchamp took the urinal out of the toilet and represented it and held it and reframed it. It's a reframing and a holding. So that's literally what I've done here with the material. This material that is and was as valueless as the earth in a way, or as valuable as the earth, both simultaneously. So, just to say, this is video of Miranda in the ditch. Overnight, she did a 24-hour performance in the ditch in the hillside, and this is I'm not sure if you can hear the sound. It comes from this. around still, so. So that is good. We will join her very shortly. Very shortly. Okay. Part 3. Earth. Owned. At the castle. At its inception, democracy entailed the exercise of voice by those with property. Democratic representation has its roots in owning land. Modern statehood is also at its heart about the ownership of land, sovereign control over a territory with borders. That is what defines a state. It is what earns your state a voice and voting rights also at the UN. Ownership of land is the cornerstone of modern politics and modern political representation. But if the earth has to be owned to thus enable our political systems, our political representation, what could earth itself own? Or what could it base its rights to be represented on? What would politics be beyond ownership stakes over land or bodies? What would happen to our politics if we could not own the earth? When the Earth Speaks has brought these questions to a sharp edge at every turn. Miranda's original ditch was allowed to be dug because the university owned the land. Peter, my partner, was concerned about the rights of the bugs on the land, because the bugs weren't asked by the university about their displacement because they did not own the land. They just live in it, like squatters perhaps. Not owning the land, they have no right to speak, but in the meanwhile, without permission and with just one witness, perhaps Peter, they, the spiders and the bugs, they moved into the university-owned monitor boxes to live. Some might have been there precisely because they were displaced inhabitants from the ditch. The waste heat of the monitor system provided them with excellent new homes, new opportunities, unexpected but important opportunities in the cold. But then the Queen died. And because the monarch ultimately owns the land, all the land that the university also sits in, the university denied Miranda the right to lie in the ditch because it looked like a grave. It would be disrespectful, said the university to the head of the state, the owner of these isles, for her performance to go ahead. Here at the castle too, the struggle over access over earth has been interestingly intense. The government of Hesse owns the land here around this castle. First, they were not responding to my efforts to ask them for their permission to dig a ditch to lie in the castle grounds. I was not asking the ground for permission. I had not gotten to that because first the government, its civil servants had to be consulted so that they could, the state government here could, the law could speak for the earth around the castle. And because they didn't answer, we were suspended for some months, suspended off the ground, hovering in law, in abstract permissions of our political systems. Eventually they said, no, you cannot dig here at the earth. This is a historical monument. They declared it such, and such it is. You cannot possibly get inside the earth here, for it is sacred here, sacred to the state, sacred to our history. These are our green fields to do as we wish. To upturn them, the ground here, would be to upturn, to disrespect the governmental force that made it historic. In the meanwhile, Earth sits apparently waiting for our claims of ownership to be made and to be jostled over, and yet not at all silent, but going about its business in its multitude of ways, multitude of agencies, enabling worms, trees, bird nests, so on. So not being able to dig the ground here, we thought we could bring a bit of earth from Wales with us to speak with you. But that earth of the Welsh uplands, that peat land that is so in need of conservation, so tranquil and celebrated, at the border, it becomes a threat. Where are you taking that earth? And why? Is it a biological hazard? It's a threat. Surely it looks suspicious. Why are you aligned with this earth? What's your problem? Let it go. It's a hazard. You're a hazard. Some alliances, human and non-human, are like a form of terrorism to the state's ownership of the land. When the earth speaks across the border, it calls into being the panicky control of the state over us, over our land, over our bodies. It also calls into question the state's and our sole right to speak. Without ownership of the earth, the state would crumble as we would as sovereign bodies over ourselves. Its legality would be shown to be a magic trick, a kind of a conjuring. Its relationship based on a lifting of us from the earth. Without the all-important mediator of the earth, up in the air goes our state, our international, up in the air it goes. No wonder it's so important to securitize the earth, to own it, and to silence it. If it would be allowed to speak back, it would call out our arbitrary political magic tricks. It would reveal our secrets, the secret sources of our power over Earth. No, the Earth, all of it, it must be owned. It must be represented by us, its human state owners. It must be silenced. Otherwise, we might crash land onto the Earth without the stability of the state, without the stability of owners, borders, onto Earth, with Earth speaking in strange tongues inside our bodies, our institutions, our political interactions. We can't have that. That would end our politics as we know it. That's it. Thank you.